Welcome back. Our guest in this segment is Dawn Evans. Dawn is with the Our Place Society. Dawn, I think everybody kind of knows Our Place one way or another. It's a big part of the downtown community, and I mean, the situation that you guys have to deal with is remarkable and I think totally unnecessary. So maybe you can start, even though people kind of know, what is Our Place?
Well, Our Place is a community center for the poor. I mean, so we're often thought of as the hub for the homeless. I mean, we offer a number of programs and services for people in need.
I don't want to say the problem, but is this a growth industry? I mean, it seems like more and more people are there, and you have expanded hours and expanded services as well.
We're seeing a big increase in the number of people coming in. We actually served 50% more meals in 2014 than the previous year. So it's been a big jump, and part of that's because we're offering a lot more programs and services, so we're meeting more needs. But the two demographics that we're seeing grow the most are in the seniors. We're seeing a lot more people on fixed income. You know, people are living longer. They're dealing with high costs for rent and medications, and they just have a hard time making ends meet. Another area that we're really seeing growth in is the younger people. You know, they can't get jobs. We're seeing people, you know, that are a little more mobile, traveling across the country, looking for work, looking for places that are you know, more child-friendly or youth-friendly, and some of the bigger cities are a little more dangerous, so we're seeing that, an influx of that. And people coming out of things like foster care, you know, I mean, there's just not the support services for people when they leave foster care. And so that's, you know, that's the other area that we're really seeing grow, but you know, we're just seeing higher numbers all over.
So Dawn, I've long thought that this entire situation of homelessness. Now, you said, like, for seniors, you're seeing more and more seniors come in. They probably do have a place to live, but not enough money for food. So they may come down for food and companionship.
You'd be surprised how many seniors are on the street. You know, there's a number of them that aren't housed.
Okay, so then getting back to what I said, I've long thought that this entire situation is completely unnecessary. There's no need. I mean, you're always going to have a few people who, for one reason or another, but I'm sure 95 to 98% of the homeless people would like to have a nice little place to live in and where you can have a life. So am I right or am I wrong? Is this...
Absolutely. I mean, and homelessness is solvable. There's some communities that have made huge progress. I mean, they actually expect Medicine Hat to be the first city in Canada to eliminate homelessness.
I've heard that.
And many communities in Alberta are doing really well, and in the States. I mean, people have 10-year plans, and they're, you know, it requires an investment and affordable housing and supportive housing. But the plans that seem to be working well are plans that have measurables and are accountable, and, you know, they do report cards, and you know, they're just making really good progress.
Okay, what's the plan here in BC?
Well, each city has their own plan. I mean, it's a...
Okay, but that's, you know, I often hear on the radio, they'll be interviewing on CFAX or maybe CBC, they'll be interviewing city councillors and saying, what are you doing? But of the three levels of government, it's the cities who have the least ability, because the cities don't have any money. The provincial government has money and the federal government has money.
Correct.
So cities may have their plans, but why isn't anything happening except it's getting bigger and worse?
Well, and that's the problem, that, you know, the federal government and the provincial governments just aren't there in the way they need to be. I mean, it's not that they're not there, but they're just not putting the resources into it, and the cities just don't have the ability. So in Alberta, you have the corporate sector that's also participating in it. I mean, it's a community problem. We can't expect government to do it all. You know, it's going to require business, individuals, faith communities, government all working together. But certainly we're going to need more support from the government to really tackle the issue.
Okay, so if you were the czar and you were going to solve, let's say you had a budget, a big budget, and you wanted to solve the homeless problem in Victoria in 3 years or 4 years. can it be done? Can the housing be built? 'Cause how many people are we actually talking about that are really homeless, including the couch surfing and everything else, who just
Yeah,
need a,
you know, we don't
place?
even actually know. I mean, they
3,000,
they count
10,000?
in Victoria. They count the people that are in temporary accommodation, and and the number at the last count was about 1,150. So that's not even counting the people on the street or the people that are couch surfing. So that number could grow quite dramatically.
So we're looking at 2,000 people, 3,000 people.
Well, we're probably, you know, between 1,500 and 2,000 anyway.
Okay, let's use the number 2,000. So let's say 700. You got 3 years, 700 housing units a year. We're not talking about luxury accommodation. We're talking about a nice small place where a person can have a sitting room and a kitchen.
Yeah, the other missing thing though is prevention. You know, I mean, you have to prevent people from falling into crisis and into homelessness, and people will always come into crisis. I mean, people will lose jobs, they'll have health problems, they'll, you know, marriage breakups. I mean, things will happen, but you need to have the support there to help people out of it. And you know, if someone ends up in crisis and goes on social assistance, they give you $375 for rent. You know, it's not enough. So it forces people into homelessness, and then you don't even get the $375. People coming out of jail, you know, 60% of the people in the provincial jail are homeless. And if you don't have the supports, you just end up cycling through, you know, through the jails and through homelessness. And, you know, people being discharged from the hospital. I mean, there's so many things that are feeding it that need to be addressed at the same time. You know, we don't have any government-funded treatment center in this city. So people that are trying to deal with addiction issues in this community, it's just really hard to find the support. Lack of mental health services. So until we address those kind of things, we're going to continue to see more people become homeless.
Okay,
And
so
then,
how do you address those issues? It seems like you've got to have a place for them to live when they get out of jail, when they have a problem that suddenly you don't have a place to go. There could be.
yeah, so there needs to be,
and it's got to be supportive. It's got to be. I mean, I'm talking about supportive housing where it's safe. You know, it's clean, it's nice, it's well built, and we can have that.
Right, and it's got to have the support service to deal with the mental health and addiction
Yes,
issues.
absolutely.
Well, we just started going into the provincial jail and doing some pre-release work. So we go in and deal with people's situations 30 days before they get out, and try to connect them to housing and treatment services in the community, which is still not a long time to be able to do that, but it's better than when they just get out and end up on our doorstep. You know, we find that people coming out of jail, if they've often had some time to think and they want to change their lives, they've gained 30 pounds or, you know, from eating regularly, and they've gotten off drugs, and they get out, and if there's nothing there for them, it doesn't take long before they're back on the street and back on drugs and then back in the jails. The other thing that we really want to try to see happen in this city is a therapeutic community. So an actual place for people to go when they are released from jail, instead of going back onto the street, that they actually have a place that they can go and live and work on their recovery and be in a community that's supportive, and then transition into the community, you know, about a year later.
We were talking earlier about costs, and you know, as I'm talking about, yeah, why don't we have housing for people who are homeless? And people are saying, where's the money going to come from? It's actually, I think, cheaper to do that than to have people homeless and pay for them to have a shelter to go to every night, and all the associated health costs, police costs, and etc. So it's actually the cheapest way to go, I think, is to create homes for the homeless.
You're absolutely right. I mean, it's much cheaper. You know, the average cost of having somebody living on the street is about $55,000 a year. And if it's somebody that's been street entrenched for a long period of time, that number can easily run up over to $100,000 a year. And like you said, it's for shelters, it's for law enforcement, it's for emergency room visits and healthcare services and people that, you know, cycling through the jails. I mean, all of those services are extremely expensive, and it's about $32,000 a year to house somebody with supports. So with supports for their mental health and their addiction issues, so it's not just the right thing to do, but it's the financially fiscal thing to do. The thing is, it takes an investment.
So I'm just going to ask you to repeat those numbers, and everybody can just think of how crazy are we as a society when we're doing the opposite. I think you said 32,000 to provide.
The average cost is $32,000 a year to provide housing with supports.
And that means a homeless person or street person or a person who needs help will have a place to live, and people assisting in trying to help them back into normal life and recovery, because that's 32,000 and it's good. Now we're spending 50,000.
Average of $55,000 per person.
To keep them on the street. So there is something very wrong going on here.
Well, and I think part of the problem is too that you actually have to take that money and put it into it. So if you don't, if there's going to be less cost for law enforcement and for emergency room visits, you have to take money out of those systems, and that's the tough part, because then you have to start cutting those budgets and putting the money elsewhere. Yeah. The thing is, in the long term, you're going to save money. And
actually, there's lots of money that could be brought in from other places and used to do what has to be done.
And it's going to require capital investment, and that's where the province and the federal government need to come in to play a part.
So let's just say there are solutions. We can solve this problem. We shouldn't even have this problem. We should have solved it many years ago, but here we are today, which is why our place is so important in stemming the tide. So programs and services at our place, what is there for people?
Yeah, so we have a lot of different programs. We deal with some of the basic needs like food. We serve 1,500 meals a day. We have showers, we have a drop-in center, we have clothing, we have a recreational games room, but more than that, we have 45 different programs that are designed to help people meet their needs around education, employment. We have different employment programs, healthcare programs. We have a new medical room that we've built. 25% of the people that we see are Aboriginal. So we have a residential school survivor counselor that comes in, and we have a healing circle. We have acupuncture, acupressure. We have things like art therapy, music, choir, knitting. There's just a whole number of different things to assist people in many different ways.
So as you said, a community center for the homeless.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. What's the feeling around the place?
Well, there's hope there. Because there's so many different opportunities. Opportunities bring hope. So I think that that's probably one of the biggest things that we can bring to people. And then a sense of belonging. So, we don't turn anybody away. Everyone's welcome. We're low barrier. And so people are treated with unconditional love, non-judgmental, so that, it's home for so many people in this community.
This is a time of, I think, fairly high unemployment, high costs. How do people break out? Can people break out? If you're in the bottom few percent of the economic ladder, how do you get out of it?
It's extremely hard.
Yeah.
To try and compete for jobs when you're homeless or living in poverty, it's really hard. You don't even have money for clothes, to go to an interview. So you get trapped in that poverty so easily. We're working hard on trying to get funding for an employment program that really goes from taking people from right where they are, right from the pre-employment, just hygiene issues and responsibility and some of those very early stage things that people need, and then working on some different training programs for people and mentoring and support. People, once they get jobs, they need support to be able to maintain those jobs. If somebody's dealing with addiction issues or mental health issues and they have an outburst of anger or something, there needs to be someone to support the individual, but also the employer. So we're looking at hopefully doing something in this area over the next year, and we've had a really popular sponsored breakfast program that's been really popular with the business communities, where the business community comes in and pays for the cost of the breakfast and comes in and serves it. And so we've been developing these relationships with businesses, and we've been talking to them about, providing some job opportunities for some of the people that we serve, and they seem to be really open to it. So it's, we think that we can, really help in that area.
Yeah. A friend of mine was just in Northern Europe, and he said he just didn't see it there. He was in Germany, Austria, maybe Sweden, Denmark. There weren't people living on the streets. There weren't homeless. There weren't people pushing shopping carts. So we can definitely solve this problem.
Well, and when you go to some of these other countries, and even if you go to Alberta, someone on disability in Alberta gets, I think it's $1,488 a month to live on. And here it's $900. The extra $500 can make a big difference.
Yeah, lets you have a place to live.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I think when you go to, some of these European countries and some of these other countries, that if someone's in crisis, the supports are enough for them to actually survive.
Yes.
Where here, it just isn't.
But here there used to be, because when I was growing up in Canada, these problems were very more minimal than they are now.
Yeah, I mean, it just hasn't kept up.
Yeah.
Hasn't kept up with the cost of living. The rates just haven't been raised, to the levels that they need to be. This is one of the most expensive cities in the country to live.
As we all know.
Yeah.
Last question. Does mild weather, has Victoria got a big problem because we've got mild weather, which all of us want to come to live in?
And often people think that, but it hasn't been my experience. I mean, most people that we're seeing are people that are from this area and from the island. Anybody that isn't from the island has probably come here years ago for work or love, and things haven't worked out. But people that are homeless don't generally move because you're dealing with a lot of mental health issues, and there's a lot of anxiety, there's a lot of fear. They need to be around, close to the surroundings that they know. So for somebody to move from another city to here when you're homeless is really, really challenging, and we don't see very much of it. Where you do see some of it, the transient homeless population, is around the young people because they're a little more mobile and they're not entrenched into it.
It's a big problem. We can definitely solve it. Our place is one of the solutions, but we need the housing. And our provincial and federal governments have got to build it. It's really, if we want to solve the problem, that's what we have to do. And if we're not solving it, you have to wonder why not. Don Evans, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks for watching this segment of Citizens Forum.